Back in 2021, I was in active addiction and I was really using a lot of different substances to try to self-medicate. I had heard at the time that LSD was good for addiction, and during this time I was really active in the drug scene online. I was buying drugs off the dark web because I was miserable, and I was also going to grad school. I was what you would call a functional addict. Really, I was keeping my secret away from people, but I did know that the people that loved and cared about me at the time really were worried for me because I appeared gaunt, really tired, fatigued, and wasn't really myself. I was messed up most of the days and really just didn't know what I was doing to myself. So it all started when I bought some acid off WHM off the dark web. Usually I got my stuff from the same guy and the same vendor, but he was away, so I decided why not test a new batch. I had purchased a new batch from this guy with a Scooby-Doo profile picture. I also thought to myself, what's the big deal, right? I'm fiending, I want to take a break from grad school, kind of like trip out of my mind. I kept rationalizing my actions by excusing it by saying, well, I'm experiencing domestic violence, no one cares about me, and I thought I'd be healing myself by not facing my problems and running away from them as I always did back then. How stupid was I? Gosh. Part 1. I had just finished taking my final that day. After having a really long work day, I had a work meeting I didn't care about, and I was anticipating just the whole day, really having these tabs in my pocket, being excited to take them. I also thought I'd have a really good experience because I've had some really incredible moments on LSD, and I thought to myself, well, it passed the test. I deserve it after a hard day with finals and work. I also was excited to take the final and got a really good score, so it further motivated me to take this compound so that way I can have the experience of a lifetime, quote unquote, a spiritual journey. I drove myself to campus at around 4 p.m. after doing the online final. I was really stoked, really excited because I thought I'd have just a wonderful experience. I had tested the acid as I said, and I made it to campus. I've done this before where I would walk around the arboretum, take the compound, listen to music, and have some really deep and introspective moments. However, this turned out to be a complete nightmare and a complete train wreck. I was able to park and I took 3 tabs. This was my usual dose and I was always able to control it at the time. However, this time I felt something completely different. I felt a metallic taste go right through my tongue, and I also felt this shocking sensation, a very heavy body load. I walked it off for a little bit, thinking that, okay, well, this is a new batch, maybe it's different, plus I tested it, and it did say it was a little stronger, so I didn't know that if I panicked it would just make things completely worse. As soon as I walked down the stairs to campus, I started becoming really uncoordinated. Each step felt like molasses, and my thoughts were just starting to loop. I also noticed that even within 30 minutes, I was already seeing tracers. It was almost as if I was walking through the rain, and it started to become dark because this was around 5 p.m. Not a good choice. Still, I've had very difficult experiences too, but I was always able to navigate through them, so I was like, this won't be any different, right? I was walking around and immediately I closed my eyes. I saw this dark side of the moon tracer repeating itself over and over again as I closed my eyes, and then this metallic type of appearance appeared everywhere. I was walking and I saw, almost as if it was raining, a very staticky image. I started to have really intense body loads, where my body felt like tiger traps. I was trying to move my fingers, but each finger felt like it was moving individually, as if there was some sort of trap, some sort of delay, and I felt my blood pressure escalate. I tried sitting down to calm myself down on the bench, but unfortunately, it only made things worse. I felt completely delirious at this point and noticed my blood pressure continuing to rise. I was panicking. However, I used the coping skill that I learned in grad school, which is meditation, taking deep breaths, telling myself everything's gonna be okay. That didn't do anything. In fact, I started freaking out even more because when I closed my eyes, I saw this digital realm. It was almost as if I was in a vaporwave video or some sort of sci-fi movie. I tried walking around to see if that would help after taking a break. However, my vision was completely blurred. I tried walking and I couldn't even walk in a straight line. It was almost like walking with a dirty windshield. I felt myself become more delirious, and my body had told me, "You poisoned yourself." This was when I became panicked. I didn't know what to do. I thought, should I call 911? However, it was finals week. I didn't want to bring attention to myself, especially for something embarrassing. Especially for obviously committing a crime for getting drugs online. And also, I didn't want my peers to know what I was doing. I had kept my drug use a secret, and I wanted it to stay that way. However, something completely disgusting happened on this trip. I was walking, and I looked at my arm, and it completely vanished. My identity, myself, who I was, completely gone. I saw myself in the third person walking like a video game character. And weird words are coming into my head like persnippety, persnippety, persnippety. It was such a weird experience, and I closed my eyes and I had died. That's when I began freaking out. I got my phone and I called 911. The operator answered, and she asked me for my name, where I was at, what time it was. I couldn't have answered that even with a gun to my head. I kept on mumbling, crying, whining. I didn't know who I was or where I was at. Fortunately, I had lapses where I would remember some bits of myself, and I had my ID perfect. I set up an approximate location to be picked up by the EMTs. It was under a staircase at school, which is where unfortunately a lot of people walk through. However, I was fortunate that it was finals week and people were at the library, which was not the area where I was at. I met up with the EMTs, and I was a grade A asshole to them. They started asking me questions about what I had taken, what was going on, to assess the situation. I couldn't even let out a coherent sentence. I started babbling. It's almost as if I had taken a truth serum. I let them know everything. I told them how I got the drugs through the illicit means. I told them about my child abuse, my domestic violence experiences, how I felt like shit, how I hated myself, how I hated my classmates, my peers. I became very open, and not in a good way. I felt humiliated after, having lapses that I shared everything. I had given them enough information to incriminate me, and also to do anything they really wanted to, if they had malice. I was particularly mean to this one EMT, who just looked like my friend. One I had during undergrad for some reason. I just thought of him immediately, so I started acting friendly. However, that friendliness started becoming insulting. For some reason, I started talking about racism because he was white, and then I started making uncomfortable comments about his hairline. It was so insulting. I saw how he was hurt by my comments, and they noticed that they just couldn't stabilize me. So at that point, they strapped me up and they monitored me. They took me to the local hospital, and I thought to myself, fuck, I'm going to prison. There's no way I'm getting out of this. I gave them enough information to incriminate me, essentially, so I thought, shit, this is it. I'm going to jail. I closed my eyes and entered that digital world again, and I felt myself completely paralyzed. I saw myself being sentenced by the judge to life in prison. I saw myself in chains. I saw my bald head. I saw my mom and all the people I care about cry. I felt like such a disappointment, such a failure. I started becoming physically aggressive in the vehicle. I was rocking back and forth, trying to strap myself out, because in my head, I was going to jail. I was fucked. I'm never going to see my family again, all over something so fucking stupid. The EMTs were really helpful. They monitored me, tried making friendly conversation, and tried making this as pleasant as possible by asking me questions about my favorite food, my favorite drink, really trying to be friends with me. Unfortunately, this didn't work. I kept on becoming more aggressive, yelling, because in my head, this was it. I'm going to jail for life. I had disappointed everyone I cared about, everyone I loved, and felt like a failure. I felt like death. Fortunately, which I completely deserved, the one EMT that I was insulting earlier looked at me directly in the eye, pulled out his taser, and told me, "Don't move." That shook me enough to calm me down and really get that pyramidal side to save me. Then I did something so stupid. I was really thirsty because I hadn't had any water and I was dehydrated from the drug. So I was acting like a fish almost and saying, "Water, I need water." I probably looked so crazy. Damn. We shortly made it to the hospital, and I received a glass of water. I felt a lot better after. However, I was still a little out of it. I kept on mumbling nonsense and was put in a room to just wait it out. Fortunately, at some point I became really coherent and I was able to walk by myself, but not completely. I think the EMTs personally couldn't stand me anymore because I was being kind of a nuisance. Then again, I did black out during that time period, so who really knows what happened? All I remember was mumbling to myself, walking back and forth in the waiting room, people giving me weird stares, and then just going to the restroom and looking at myself in the mirror multiple times, drinking water, and then going out again. Things started becoming clear to me. Oh fuck, did all that just really happen? Fuck. I felt lucky for not being in prison. They very easily could have called someone, an officer, to just be there waiting for me. I started crying, breaking down into tears, and really being grateful. I started going off on this weird tangent about time, and about how time is all perspective, really pseudo-intellectual things. I had to walk to my car, which was 20 minutes away from campus, and during that time, I had a really deep introspective thought to myself. I could have lost everything. I could have put my career in jeopardy. I could have been reported to my licensing board. I could have been sentenced to jail. I got so fucking lucky. I walked to my car after 20 minutes, and fuck. I noticed that when I was freaking out, I completely forgot to turn off my car, and it probably ended up draining my battery. Damn. I stayed in my car for a bit, waiting to come down from the compound, and it was already 5 hours in, and I noticed something strange. I was already coming down after the 6-hour mark. Fortunately, I was able to get a boost from the stranger, who kindly noticed that I was a little off, but helped me regardless. I went home after completely coming down from the compound, and I felt just lucky to be home. I went to sleep, but woke up with one of the worst body aches of my life. I also felt dissociated, disconnected, and had some HPPD that was fortunately just temporary. I felt anxious, depressed. I also felt disconnected from reality. I would see the cars move, and I would have to double check, are they really moving? Or is this just some sort of simulation? I also would get panic attacks if I would think about the event, and it almost gave me a post-traumatic response. If you thought I learned my lesson from this, I didn't. I actually took the same batch a second time, which confirmed my suspicion that this was not LSD. To be continued.